You are lying on an operating table. A mask covers your face. Someone tells you to count backward from 10. You get to 7, maybe 8, then nothing. Not darkness, not dreaming, nothing. No time passes for you, and yet hours pass for everyone else in the room. Your body is cut open, repaired, stitched shut. You feel none of it. You remember none of it. But here's the strange part. Nobody can fully explain where you actually went. You assume anesthesia is just very deep sleep. It is not. Sleep and general anesthesia look similar from the outside, but inside your skull, they are almost nothing alike. During normal sleep, your brain stays active. Different regions talk to each other in waves, cycling through stages, dreaming, processing memory. Under anesthesia, something else happens. The conversation between brain regions doesn't just quiet down, it shuts off. Neuroscientist Emery Brown, who studies the effects of anesthesia at MIT, has spent years mapping exactly what these drugs do to the brain. His research shows that anesthesia doesn't simply turn off consciousness like a light switch. It creates a specific, reversible brain state, distinct from sleep, distinct from coma, distinct from death. A state with its own signature. Slow, synchronized waves roll across the cortex. Different regions that normally exchange constant information suddenly go quiet, each operating in isolation. Your brain is still electrically alive. It is just no longer integrated. Why does that matter? Because consciousness, according to many researchers, isn't about any single brain region lighting up. It's about integration. It's about different parts of your brain sharing information fast enough and richly enough to create a unified experience. Take away that sharing, and the lights are still on, but nobody's synthesizing what they see. Think of your brain like a newsroom. Under normal waking conditions, reporters everywhere are gathering information, phoning it in, cross-checking each other's stories. The editor pulls it all together into one coherent narrative. That narrative is what you experience as being you, right now, reading this sentence. Under anesthesia, the phone lines go dead. Reporters are still technically at their desks, but no one is talking to anyone else. There is no more unified story. There is no more narrator. This idea comes from a scientific framework called integrated information theory, developed in part by neuroscientist Giulio Tononi. The theory proposes that consciousness arises from the amount and complexity of information a system integrates, not from any specific location in the brain. Anesthesiologists have used this idea to build new tools that measure something researchers call the communication between brain regions during surgery, rather than just tracking how much electrical activity is present overall. A brain can be extremely active and still be unconscious if that activity isn't talking to itself. So where do you go? The honest answer is nowhere. There is no you to go anywhere. For the length of the surgery, the specific configuration of connected brain activity that generates your subjective experience simply does not exist. It isn't paused, waiting in a queue. It is switched off at the level of integration itself. That should unsettle you a little. It unsettles most people the first time they really sit with it. Here's where it gets stranger. Not everyone experiences total absence. In rare cases, patients report a kind of vague, disjointed something during anesthesia, without full awareness, without pain, but not quite nothing either. This is called anesthesia awareness, and it happens in a very small fraction of surgeries, often when drug dosing has to be kept lower for medical reasons. Researcher George Mashour, an anesthesiologist and neuroscientist at Michigan, has spent much of his career studying these edge cases. His work suggests that consciousness may not be a simple on-off switch at all. It might be more like a dimmer, with graded levels between full awareness and true unconsciousness, and anesthesia drugs push you down that dimmer to different depths depending on the exact chemical and the exact dose. So that reframes the entire question. You've probably imagined anesthesia as a wall. On one side, you. On the other side, blackness. But what if it's closer to a spectrum, a slope you slide down, most of the way to the bottom, but not always all the way? Why do you feel like no time has passed then? This is one of the most consistently reported experiences from anesthesia patients across cultures and procedures. You count to 8. The surgeon works for 4 hours. You wake up and it feels instantaneous, like a badly cut piece of film with the middle scene missing. That's because your sense of time isn't a separate sense sitting off to the side monitoring a clock. Time, as you experience it, is stitched together by your brain out of the connected sequence of experiences you're having. New memories forming, one after another, one attention shift after another. Cut off the integration, and you cut off the raw material time is made from. There's no stretch of experience to measure. So your brain, when it wakes back up, simply picks up the thread exactly where it left it, because there was no thread running through the gap at all. This is different from sleep, where you do have some sense that time passed, however vague. Under anesthesia, the gap isn't foggy, it's absent, which tells you something important. Consciousness isn't a container that anesthesia fills with fog. It's closer to a process that anesthesia interrupts completely, then restarts. Now, here's the modern mirror, the part of this that reaches into your everyday life. Every night when you fall asleep, something related happens, just less extreme. The intense moment-to-moment integration that makes you softens. Not to zero, the way it does under anesthesia, but enough that your sense of continuous self gets interrupted, patched back together each morning out of fragments and assumptions. You've never actually experienced the transition into deep sleep. You've only ever experienced its edges, falling and waking, with a black box in between. Anesthesia just makes something that's already quietly true about your mind undeniable. Your sense of an unbroken, continuous self running 24 hours a day is at least partly an illusion your brain constructs after the fact. It's not lying to you exactly. It's doing what any good narrator does with missing footage. It fills the gaps smoothly, so smoothly you never notice the cut. Some researchers have pushed this even further. Cognitive scientist Anil Seth, who studies consciousness at the University of Sussex, has argued that your everyday waking experience is itself a kind of controlled hallucination, your brain's best real-time guess about what's out there, constantly checked and corrected by incoming sensory information. Anesthesia doesn't create a totally foreign state. It simply removes the checking process altogether and lets you see, briefly, what's underneath the guesswork. Nothing. Not because nothing exists, because the process that generates something for you specifically needs integration to run at all. So the next time someone asks what anesthesia feels like, you can tell them the truth. It doesn't feel like anything, because for those hours, there was no one home to feel it. Not asleep, not dreaming, not trapped in some dark room waiting for the lights to come back on. Simply, temporarily, absent. And when you wake up, groggy, blinking under fluorescent lights, the story of you starts back up exactly where you left it, stitched together so seamlessly you'd never guess there was ever a gap at all. You are lying on an operating table. A mask covers your face. Someone tells you to count backward from 10. You get to 7, maybe 8. Then nothing.